If you're Gen X, there's a good chance this thought's crossed your mind. What if I retire and I'm wrong? Not wrong by a little, but wrong in a way that you can't undo. Well, today I want to talk about the five biggest fears Gen X carries into retirement and why most of them aren't really about money at all. So stay with me because even if one of these hits home, you're not broken, you're just normal. Gen X is in a weird spot. We're old enough to feel time speeding up, but we're young enough to remember when pensions still existed. And we lived through multiple market crashes, multiple layoffs, and promises that, just to keep it real with you, they haven't aged well. So if retirement feels scary, even when the numbers say you're okay, there's a reason. But let's walk through the fears that most Gen Xers don't say out loud. Fear number one, it's running out of money. This one is obvious, but it's deeper than it sounds. Gen X doesn't fear being broke at 85. We fear being broke at 62 because, unlike other generations, we don't trust pensions, we don't trust how markets are going to behave, and we don't trust that help will magically show up. So even when the math works, the fear still whispers, what if this doesn't last? And that's how people who could retire don't. If you ever had, or if you ever said just one more year, keep watching. Number two, working longer than our bodies can handle. I talk about this a lot where I say that everybody's going to retire at some point because either you're going to have a physical ailment that makes you retired or something that's going to happen with your job. You're just not going to be able to find a job, but everybody's going to retire. But a lot of us are planning on working into our 70s, late 70s and 80s, which is going to be far longer than our bodies can handle. And that causes this to sneak up on people because not that I don't want to work. It's more of what if I can't work? And what Gen X, what we watched is we watched our parents break down physically. I talk a lot about my dad who had a stroke in his mid 60s and passed away some years later, but never really was able to fully appreciate his retirement. You start to see coworkers that are getting pushed out early. Folks, I've told you before, I'm a retired HR guy. I've seen a lot. I've been in a lot of conversations, and I've been on the wrong side of some things that I look back and wish would have gone a little bit differently. And one of those is seeing coworkers being pushed out quietly. I have friends of mine in my personal circles who got laid off because of a restructuring or a reorganization, things that normally happen in organizations, but then they can't find another job. And you start to see very, very quickly that age it becomes real after the age of 50. So the fear that people experience and that you're experiencing is not laziness. It's being trapped between declining health and declining options. And here's the irony. Many people delay retirement to feel safer, while time quietly makes working a little bit harder. Fear number three is becoming a burden. As a member of Gen X, I must say I pride myself, and I'm sure many of us out there, let me know in the comments what you think, but many of us, we pride ourselves on our independence. So the idea of asking kids for help, needing financial support, or just losing autonomy, folks, that's just unbearable because we didn't grow up that way. We grew up with a key around our neck, tied with a shoestring that we would use to get into the house. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. One time I went to school and I had a black eye, and one of my friends asked me, he thought I got beat up. Hey, Salvador, did you get beat up? No, I didn't get beat up. I hit my eye on the doorknob. Now, remember, I'm 6'8". So I reached down to get my key, or he asked me, he says, well, how did you hurt your eye? How'd you get a black eye on the doorknob? Because he thought I was just kidding. So I told him. I was on my way out of the house. I dropped my key, bent over to hit my key. Booyah! Right in the eye socket. So I had a black eye. It wasn't because I got beat up, wasn't because anything happened. It was because my big ass was reaching down to get a key, and I'm not in those low altitudes enough to realize that there's hazards down there, and then I busted up my eye. So it's kind of a funny story. But we pride ourselves on independence and being able to figure out problems to solutions. But when you look at the fear that we have as Gen X, it shows up in ways that you probably wouldn't anticipate. And those ways are like oversaving. We want to put together such a perfect and such a high number that we want to make sure, double, triple, quadruple sure that we don't find ourselves in a bad situation. Another way it shows up on almost the opposite of that is underspending. One of the challenges I have as a retiree is not spending enough money. I'm always thinking about saving money. Interesting. One of the things that I've done is I've started to invest a little bit more into my YouTube channel, and different types of softwares and things you use to edit your videos and just to have decent equipment or just to have good lighting. Those things all cost money. And I find myself in situations where I don't want to spend the money in order to get those things because I don't want to overspend, and that causes me to underspend. And my wife always says, this stuff is all in the budget. Plus, you're making a couple $100s a month from your YouTube channel. So why don't you use that to pay for your YouTube channel? So what did I do? I took heed to what she said, like I always do, and I went out and bought some new software. So I should be bringing something better to you, but underspending is one of the ways that it manifests. And then never letting yourself enjoy what you've already earned. Sometimes we get caught into the rut that if we're enjoying what we're doing, then we're doing something wrong. If we have some time off, if we have some downtime, then somehow we're lazy, somehow we're doing something wrong. And the reality is, it's not about luxury. In fact, what we don't want and what Gen X doesn't want, we're not looking for luxury. We're just looking for dignity. Part of the quickest way to strip away that dignity is tell a Gen X person that they're being a burden on somebody because of something that perhaps they can't control. Fear number 4 is basically losing your identity after work. This is dropping here because there's been some things that I've been thinking about, and I want to bring this to you. One of the ways that I identify my identity, communicate my identity, is my personal mission statement of uplifting the human condition in any way that I can. So there's a couple things that I've been thinking of. A lot of you have been making comments about the shirts that I wear, and I have the latest and greatest of Gen X t-shirts. But, my Mr. Rogers Neighborhood, my Orange Crush shirt that I'm wearing today, I've got some other shirts that have slogans. And a lot of people ask me, where do I get my shirts? So what I'm going to start doing, I don't know if I'm going to do it for this video because I haven't set up for it, but let me know if you would like the idea of me putting links down in the description so you could see where I get my shirts. And then I think, and I'm just being fully transparent, I think that if I put a link down and then you go into it, then I get like 10%. So if it's a $20 shirt, I think I get like $2 or something. So it's not a way of me making money, but I think it would be great for everybody around the world to be wearing the same shirts that I do, because I think they're some pretty cool shirts. And I'm thinking about another t-shirt that is a Sabado t-shirt. So Sabado gives you the definition. I thought about putting my face on it, but I think that might be a little bit too vain. But think about that. Let me know where that sits with you, because it's not about trying to make money off. It's not about trying to be popular, but I can't afford to buy. I had 50,000 views this month. I can't afford to buy every view or shirt, but I can make my shirts available. So let me know what you think of it. It's just an idea. If it doesn't go over well, then I won't do it. And I'll probably put up a community post as well. But I just thought I'd ask because, again, I always try to keep it a buck with you because at the end of the day, it's all about you. But anyway, back to fear number 4, losing identity after work. This one really doesn't get talked about enough because work wasn't just a paycheck. It was also structure, validation, usefulness, and sometimes even your self-worth. So the fear isn't boredom. It's the quiet question. If I'm not producing, do I still matter? And a lot of us grapple with that. I deal with that. And part of the reason that I think, and I mentioned in an earlier video, that I stayed so busy is because I had to give myself permission to actually not be doing something. And this is especially strong with Gen X because we're just raised to be self-sufficient, reliable, and useful. That's what was drilled into our heads every single day. And so to get to a point where you don't have to focus on those things, it's a whole different day. Retirement can feel less like freedom and more like stepping into this unknown territory that nothing about it makes sense because it takes you away from everything that you ever learned was normal in the past. And fear number 5, making an irreversible mistake. And this one freezes people. We used to call it, when I was working, we used to call it analysis paralysis. You had some people, I would say the A students, that were so concerned about making a mistake that they would analyze it and analyze it and analyze it until they couldn't get to any more problems. And then they would roll it out and then they'd make a mistake. But a lot of times what they would do is because somebody else saw them make that mistake, other people just wouldn't do it. We call that analysis paralysis. And that's what a lot of Gen X people fear, is making an irreversible mistake that you can't fix. And retirement, it feels final. I mean, there's no undo button. And even though that's the case, the truth is many retirees earn income again. We earn income in different ways. One of the things that I was talking about is I've been thinking about another thing I throw by you is doing voiceovers. I've been told that I have a voice that's easier to listen to along the spectrum of voices, and I should maybe do voiceovers. So I'm thinking about doing voiceovers. Guess what? That's an income stream. Do I need the income? No. But I figure I'd try it out, and if it works, then I'll let you know about it. That'd be kind of cool. The other thing that as a retiree that you could do that if you feel like you made a mistake is adjust your spending. Don't buy as much stuff. Don't buy as much crap. Instead of going to uh, expensive stores to buy stuff at the cheaper stores. I mean, that's what I've done. I went from spending 170 something dollars to spending $30 a month on Mint Mobile because I didn't need everything that came with a Verizon account, and my bill stays the same because I prepay for the entire year. So there are options out there to adjust spending that make more sense, or just pivot your path. Sometimes I saw a few comments through the course of the week where people said, I'm just going to take a side hustle or take a side job in retirement. So that way, a part-time job in retirement. So that way I can continue to make some money. So emotionally, it feels like if I mess this up, I can't fix it. But the reality is there are things that you can do to keep yourself out of a place where you build your own insecurity by just making sure that you give yourself the license and flexibility to maybe do things different than what you might have thought they need to look like in the beginning. And so what ends up happening a lot of times when people are afraid of messing it up, they stay put. They don't move. And it's not because they love their job. It's because the uncertainty feels scarier than the dissatisfaction. And I'll tell you, that was something that was happening with me. I was in a high level position, doing some important stuff, making good money, and it's what I had worked my whole career for. But there were times when I absolutely hated my job because I just I wasn't getting satisfaction from it, but I didn't want to leave because they say the devil that you know is better than the devil that you don't know. And a lot of us fall into that. So that's that one more year. And I'll talk about this a little bit more, but that's really that one more year syndrome in a nutshell. So here's what I want you to hear. These fears don't mean you're unprepared. They mean you're thoughtful. I always say that ignorance is bliss, or as I used to say when I was working, is that work would be so much easier if I didn't give a shit. But the problem is I always cared. And when you're thoughtful, then you think about things, and that's what raises your anxiety. It seems like you would be able to get out ahead of things, but that's what creates the nervousness and the anxiety a lot of times. And as a generation, Gen X, we didn't grow up with guarantees. We grew up adapting. We never were told that A plus B equals C. We were saying, look, you're supposed to do A and B, and hopefully C works out. Nobody ever told us that if you do A and B, then you get C. So we had to adapt. We had to figure it out. And that means retirement doesn't have to be a cliff. It could be a series of adjustable steps. That's what's happening with me. That's one of the reasons that I give you so much content. I want you to know what's going on in my mind, what I'm thinking about, and what I'm experiencing through my words. So as you shape your journey, you at least have one other person that you've talked to that you could reference their experience and say, this is not as weird as I thought it was because it's happened to Sabado too. So when I retired, the hardest part, honestly, it wasn't the math. It was trusting myself, trusting that I can adapt, trusting that life wouldn't collapse overnight, trusting that work wasn't the only thing that gave me value, and that trust didn't show up all at once, it grew. If you look at me today and you look at my situation today and you look at where I am today, it's totally different than where I was on my first video. Ask to some of you out there, I know some of you have been rocking with me for a while, but take a look at my first couple of videos and take a look at them now and let me know what you think. One of the things that I tried to do in my first few videos was I just gave it all to you. And I started to cut them back because I know they were long and people don't have time for long videos, which is why I've structured and tightened up my structure a little bit. But if you want something a little longer, let me know, and I'll certainly get out longer because there's a whole bunch that I could talk about on every one of these topics and the ones that I don't talk about. So I want to ask you, which one of these fears hits you hardest? Is it money? Is it identity? Is it health? Or is it the fear of getting it wrong? Drop it in the comments. Let me know. A lot of what I put in this content comes from the comments, and I read every comment. I don't want you, it's not about trying to get you to confess. It's more about normalizing it. And if you want to have more honest conversations about what retirement actually feels like and not the fantasy and not fear mongering, because I don't do that, subscribe to the channel. It's never my expectation that everybody retire early, but it is my expectation that you live your best life. And the reality is retirement isn't about perfection. It's about giving yourself permission. So give yourself some permission to adapt to the situations you're going to, because I guarantee that's what 90% of you want to do. Otherwise, why are you watching my channel? Anyway, on that note, have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.